he'll put you on the agenda.
Okay.
Okay, and then the last one,
Got it down now.
what?
I said, you got it down now.
I wish my dogs behaved like your dogs.
I think you're down to
Yeah, everyone does.
You would never get out of it, you didn't do your job.
Right. And you have personal experience.
Yes, I do. Village put out the special bulletin about Save the Frogs Day. That was a question from Amy. And maybe combine it with Arbor Day and or with the other activities.
I think cross-pollinating is a great idea, and I suggest since we will have people coming here for Arbor Day, that we should have some publicity for Save the Frogs Day.
Okay, so.
in
that's
the
it.
way of, you want a sandwich or what?
No, a special bulletin was what she was mentioning.
What?
Do you put out special bulletins from the village?
No, just-
Typically, in that, if the village is a sponsor in this, it would be okay, but
Okay.
say for non-municipal, we don't.
Okay,
You know,
then it would be on Facebook and the website, which would be great.
yeah, I will work on
Okay,
it.
thank you. Okay, I'm done.
That's it, that was easy.
Yeah?
Okay,
So we have a motion on the floor,
we do, contingent upon the,
receipt of
Oh, we
insurance.
didn't, hold on, we didn't answer the question. So what are we gonna give them for, can we leave these with them for the, they could pass those out at their Arbor Day?
Absolutely. I
Something
think,
like that?
I think we have a long history of any not-for-profit, as long as it's a not-for-profit event in the village, we'll be happy to post things on our board and have them available at the front counter or certainly on Arbor Day to promote
Do
the
you want
event.
some more things?
And,
How many do you want?
no, I'll just,
do we have a long waiting list on the community bulletin board presently?
I have to check the availability.
Okay, because we might be able to put it up, Save the Frogs Day and.
We have a sign that we put up at the intersection of South Street and Jefferson Road. It's an event sign which we could also use to promote the event.
okay, great. And what's the special bulletin conversation at the last track of that? The special bulletin conversation is that you do it,
On Facebook.
no, that's not what I understood. I just wanna,
They do it for village sponsored events.
this is kind of village sponsored.
Right, 'cause, well, the
And the
village is
approval.
part of that, you know, we're a member and if we send out things, but a typical non-municipal event, we don't send out advertisement for.
Okay, so I will fax you the insurance liability
Correct.
when it's all signed and sealed.
Mhm.
And that will be probably tomorrow or
That's
the
right.
next day. Thank you.
And then you had some things, sorry. Do you
Well,
have a couple?
we have a motion on the floor.
Oh, yeah.
So I would second Louise's motion. Is there any comments on that?
Are you guys a 501c3? You are.
Well, I am not yet,
Okay.
but I'm raising money for Save the Frogs, which is a 501c3.
It's
Okay,
on
got
all the
And
materials.
I understand you're kind of good at PR, I've heard.
He's
If
he's
you want-
resting.
Let's talk
He's resting.
offline.
Yeah, if you want to take stuff.
There, sure. I would love to help, and we'll talk offline.
I don't like it, it's okay, just whisper.
And I don't have any further questions.
Okay, any other comments from any other board members?
Nope.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve the Save the Frogs non-municipal use permit?
Contingent on the.
Contingent on receipt of the insurance. Thank you, Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
You're approved. Thank you.
Hey,
Good seeing you.
A question for you, Dorothea.
You really helped, thank you.
Do we pay per email campaign that we send out? So, or is it a
No,
flat
it's on
rate?
our website, it's,
Thank you.
it's.
As soon as I get a map, I will get a copy to
Yeah,
you.
I can't, and just send some out, so.
Okay, that's how that's typically
It's,
done.
we used to have.
Okay.
It makes a difference.
I haven't checked my email since this morning, but I will look
Done
at it.
once, just.
Okay, okay.
So guys, I'm asking about the mechanics of the email campaigns that we run and wondering about whether there's a cost per campaign. Is it a cost per email that's sent?
No.
Or is it literally just sent through Outlook?
No, it's gonna be sent throughout the,
Okay.
we used to have,
Like constant
Stacy
contact?
Freed send them
or-
out
Okay.
through our list with the newsletter. But since
I think really it's probably like neighbor to neighbor, you know. so
Well, neighbor to neighbor,
No, we don't have anything to do with it. What I'm saying is they're
if
more
it's something
appropriate.
you want to come from the village itself,
Correct.
it's gonna have to come from my computer, me putting it on the thing.
So there's no cost, right?
There's
That's
not a
what I was
cost.
getting at.
Yeah. I think it's similar to promoting Candlelight Night. I think
No, I'm
we-
good with that, I just, typically, we're not a sponsor.
Right, but that's why it's great with them. Okay.
Okay, the next item, we have a special permit application from the Pittsburgh Pub.
I spoke to him, I apologize, it looks like he's not here, he might have got confused, because we had this switching around between zoning and us. He did fill out the application, I left a copy of it at your desk, he brought it in since then, he's just looking for the tent on the patio from 5/21 to 5/26. So it's really just the setting of the public hearing.
Is there any increase in services that they're, you know, any increased wait staff or tables or?
No,
We
it's
just want
just
it
covering
covered.
the tent, covering the tent, that's it.
Okay.
This looks different than the one that's in our packet. Is there?
Yeah, because the one in your packet is what I had at the time, that was his application to go to zoning, which was in error. So this is the proper form. I have to finalize some paperwork for him, and I'll have it all complete by the time the public hearing was done. But we needed to get him in to get the public hearing set. Yeah, this is what I need to
Is
do.
there anything that we should be asking regarding this extension? You felt it was necessary to have an extension of the special use permit because it was a change in service?
Changing use, changing how it's operating.
Okay.
So I think it's appropriate, crossing eyes, dotting Ts.
Okay. All right.
Would
well,
someone like to make a motion?
I'll make that motion. I will make a motion that we approve the,
No.
I'm sorry,
Go on public hearing on
I
that.
have to go backwards.
What?
I beg your pardon.
Go ahead.
We need to do first what Save the Frogs, waive the 45-day.
Thank you, that's
So
a
let's
good
go
catch.
backwards.
Yep.
And make that motion first.
Okay, I'll make a motion to waive the 45-day waiting period for the Save the Frogs non-municipal use permit.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Okay.
So we begin again with another, I think they need to also, don't they? 45-day, or they fall under the 45-day?
No, it's,
Oh,
yeah.
they don't
Is that okay?
It was special.
Oh, okay.
No, this
So
is
they're okay. Oh, that's right, special use permit.
Special permit, we just need to set a
a
public hearing
motion
for
to set a public hearing.
May 14th.
So moved on May 14th. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All, next agenda item are approval of consulting services for HPRB.
This is what I was.
This is the APRB, and this is approval of their preferred consultant for this.
Acting chair's request for consulting fees for CNB roof replacement.
We've talked about this a few times. This still looks very thin to me for a request, but if this is kind of the standard amount of information that we need to approve something, I'm okay with it, but it's still very thin. All those things that we talked about should be in here are not.
This is not the original request. The original request cited the competitive rates and cited a lot of information that is not in this request. I don't know why we have this here.
No, let's back. Okay, your original request was choosing that person to be their consultant, so you would get those competitive rates, okay?
Correct.
The board approved that to be the consultant. okay?
Based on the procurement policy,
Correct.
and it fulfilled
Now-
all the requirements.
The board's requirement to use that consultant was per the project, the number of hours, and the scope of work. And that's what you're seeing. They're asking to use her now for this project for that many hours. So you wouldn't need all the other stuff, because you already said
It's already been approved.
you already approved
So
that.
this is a specific project.
This is for a specific project.
So they're asking for us to approve the consultant's fee of $90 per hour, not to exceed 4 hours, for a roof replacement project.
Correct. They now want to use the consultant, and as requested by the board, every time they go to use it, please give the scope of work,
Correct.
the number of hours, and the
Exactly.
anticipated cost. So that's what they did.
Followed exactly as we told you.
Correct.
Would you like a motion?
There's still a lot of information that's not here. Payment terms, start date, end date, expected services. It's very thin as to a request for us to spend money. It's basically something written on the back of a napkin.
We did have a discussion at the last meeting because there wasn't very much detail, and it was very similar to this, that each time there was a project, there would be some sort of statement of work that was a little more detailed. So what do you normally see? And is it normally just this in an email, or is it something more official from the consultant itself?
Well, I could add detail to why a consultant is needed, and the reason is because the Chase Lincoln building was built in 1971. The architectural design is a successful blend of a contemporary contextual structure that used contemporary features in a blend of proportions and materials that reflected the historic context of the village. One of those materials was red cedar roof shingles. The problem with red cedar roof shingles is that the quality of the shingle that was available in the 70s is no longer available today. And so the challenge is to preserve the character that was intended in the original design of the building and do it in a way that is a durable solution that will last more than 5 years. Red cedar shingles are very expensive. They also tend to be in the current climate because it's young growth cedar trees that are available. It is not a long-lived material. One of the possible alternatives is a cementitious wood shingle or artificial wood shingle product that's used at Williamsburg that closely replicates the physical appearance of red cedar wood shingles.
This is all very helpful. It's not getting at the heart of the matter. The heart of the matter is this is not a statement of work. This is just a couple lines in an email. It doesn't give all kinds of information that you would look at from a vendor to procure services. I mean,
So the question is, what do you want from the AVRB?
what we laid out last time, the statement of work. It may not be from the APRB, it may be from the consultant saying, this is what we get these from T.Y. Lin, we get them from all kinds of people.
I've got a caution here because whether you do the loading of this process, I think the intent of the board was to annually approve the consultants that are used by the boards so that as they moved through the year and they had different applications, they would have fairly easy access to the consultants that would not bog down the process. And I'm worried if we make this too onerous and too much work is loaded in describing the actual detail that's going to be described, number one, we're limiting the work when we don't know the details of the application. And number two, we're going to make the process more cumbersome and slow down the approval process for our applicants.
Bob, I hear you on that, but nowhere in here, this is the complete contract.
So I think
But hold on, John. Nowhere in here does it say when we have to pay, who we pay to, what the payment terms are. Is it a person? Is it an LLC? It doesn't say what the work is for. It doesn't say an address. It doesn't give any detail whatsoever. If you guys think that this is a fine agreement to do business with somebody, we can approve it. But I think We need a little bit more than 4 lines on an email.
I think what I think is that the detail that you're, and I'm not disputing the need for that information, but the time that information should be presented is at the annual approval of the consultants that are going to be selected by each board for use through the year.
The board doesn't, APRB doesn't want to make this tough on anybody, so if we have a template of what's supposed to happen, they'll follow it. So they need the template, so that they can do the scope of work and get it to this board so it can be approved. So where do they get the template?
Dan, would you like to volunteer to write
Sure.
something up?
Love to.
Okay, great.
You may want to check the procurement policy. There's, much of that information is a part of the procurement policy. We asked Chairman McBride to provide that information, and this is what we got. We have been very concerned with the amount of time we're asking our board people to spend getting requests for proposals and how much they should be doing to document this information. I understand what you're saying, Dan. This is a relatively new process that we started with the audit. When the auditors came in, they were critical of us that we weren't doing that. And so the points that you raised are well taken. Our procurement policy has part of those requirements, but we need to refine it for the board chairpersons so they can do a better job with this documentation. So
Sounds good.
I think with this request for a 4-hour consulting job for a roof replacement, based on what they submitted the last time, and based on this, I'd be willing to make a motion to accept the request from Chairman McBride to fund 4 hours consultation work at $90 per hour by the consultant Maria Hewitt.
If I might, we want to start off the right way and do this the right way. You're going to meet again next Tuesday. The APRB is not meeting before that. If you want this done the way you want it done correctly, it's a possibility.
I think that's a great idea, and I think Dan's suggestion of having a template that could apply both to the PZBA and to the HPRB is a great idea. And the other concern I have is we already know that we place a heavy burden on the volunteers that serve our boards. And I think we also have a responsibility not to load more administrative work on them. And anything we can do to make this an easy process, and I think your suggestion, Dan, of a template is a good one. And so I would be in favor of tabling until Tuesday to give Dan a chance to write a template and present it to the board on Tuesday.
Thanks for
I was-
clarification.
I withdraw the motion, and I would suggest, Dan, that you check the procurement
Yeah.
policy. Much of that required information is a part of that policy now.
Yeah.
So you may have to reshape it a little bit, make it look pretty, and,
Sounds like-
I'd like that clarification. When we're talking about a template, are we talking about the template for the original request that the board is making? In other words, the last time we approved Maria Hewitt as the consultant to the APRB. And is that the template that we're asking for, so that these are the reasons why this particular consultant is the choice of the HPRB? I have to get used to these new HPRB. So, or are we talking about a template that each time they wish to use the chosen consultant, they need to provide the information on that template?
I would say yes.
I think so. Okay.
So one is a vendor agreement, and the other is a statement of work. And the statement of work refers to the vendor agreement.
Okay. Thank you.
So if I could add a footnote to Bob's suggestion, if I could get, and I'll work with you, Dan, if you want, on this template, if I can get it before Tuesday, then I should get something from the APRB for Tuesday, and then we can get going on it.
Sure.
So just- The applicants are kind of chafing at the bit on this.
Yep, yep, thank you all. Thank you, Dan. Okay. The next item on our agenda is the matter of setting a public hearing for extending the moratorium.
I had a question regarding an amendment a possible amendment to the resolution that we reviewed at our last meeting. And that involves the B1 district and the possibility of excluding it from the extension of the moratorium.
I met with Maria Rodzinski last night, and her suggestion was that perhaps the most sensible thing would be simply to exempt or take B1 out of the moratorium as the moratorium moves forward. And the rationale for doing this, and this is a new idea since I spoke to you yesterday, Dan, is that, and you can correct me if I've missed anything, Tom, but on the comprehensive plan committee nor on the zoning committee has there really been any thought to change anything in B1. So I think it's safe to take B1 out of the moratorium. It would allow Rachel's to go forward and wouldn't hold that business up. It would also free up basically the B1 district, and I have a zoning map here, extends along Monroe Avenue and State Street and is that part of the central business district.
And B1A or just B1?
Just B1.
Just B1. And Maria felt this was a safer route, less subject to challenge, because anything that might involve Shane Place or other areas where there are active design standards or other things being discussed on the comp plan committee and the zoning committee, those would be more subject to challenge. This she felt was a safer exception that was fairly bulletproof.
And do you agree with that, John? Do you agree with that as well, or with Tom, about the work that the comprehensive plan committee has been
What are we gonna see tomorrow?
discussing?
I mean,
Well,
we're right there.
yeah, I mean, the downtown area is essentially one area that we've had the least amount of discussion about because it's sort of the given, the one that is sort of most well understood, the direction and vision from the committee. And to answer your question, Lily, I would say that is okay, because the B1 district doesn't necessarily have existing additional design or development regulations that would be altered in the way that the rest of the districts are going to be.
Correct.
Now, there are going to be development regulations that essentially are applied to the downtown area when all is said and done, but in terms of what is changing, nothing would be significantly altered.
What's different about B1A? So what do we still have left to do with B1A that we haven't done already?
I think that I remember from our work, we have been discussing B1A design standards because there haven't been any in that historic district, and there were height restrictions and things that we were working on. And so there are changes that are on the table being considered for that, and that's why B1A wasn't considered. And this is very, very specific, this B1, so it isn't broad-based, so it doesn't infringe upon the territory of the comprehensive plan committee's work, and it's very specific to this district.
Just one example of something that's different in B1 than B1A. B1A has, for example, we currently have storefront standards, which really haven't been addressed by the comp plan committee yet or the zoning committee. That could be subject to change depending on what the discussion is. I think there's less, because of the physical configuration of B1, those issues really don't exist there. Would you agree with that, John?
Yes. Maria, that's
Okay. Well, Maria, we call her the planning goddess because. All right, any other discussion?
I have specific questions about the agreement as it was drafted. Is that something, now I know you guys wrote this, right, John and Molly? The with the whereases?
Yes.
Okay, now, do we own that, was that a,
Yeah.
okay. Let the record show Molly, not John.
Molly and John, not
Yeah.
John.
Okay, fair enough.
Jolly.
Now, did you do that, you did that and it's very useful. Do we own it and customize it ourselves, or do you own the document if we're to make changes to it?
No, feel free to make changes to
Okay.
it. What I tried to do was, to the best of my ability, provide for where this process has been,
Yep.
and what we've gone through, and then what ultimately we're, still have yet to do.
Okay.
So that was really just
Great.
trying to front framework.
I mean, I see we kind of have institutional knowledge.
Yeah,
so
oh,
it
definitely.
seemed to make sense rather than say, Jeff, take it, Pascal said it, but
Sure.
we went this way instead of going this way.
It was very thorough. I have some specific edits. Can we go through, is now the right time to go through these, Bob?
I think it is,
Okay.
yeah. What page are you on, Dan?
Well, it's the first page of the agreement, it's the
Okay.
9th page of the packet. It's the third whereas. Purpose, got about 6 of these. The purpose of this moratorium extension is to allow for the modification, completion, and adoption of an updated comprehensive plan and zoning code, process for which came under consideration in December 2017. Now, it formally came under consideration in December 2017. It came under consideration much earlier than that. Did that lend, or does it sort of have to be after the paperwork was filed?
I would say in this case you have the history that you could. No, I would leave it to what
Leave
you
it
have.
to,
yeah,
okay.
what you have.
You can see where I was going with that.
Yeah.
Well, why, instead of under consideration, why don't we say approved? Would that clarify it?
Well, I don't think it was
It was
approved
approved before.
in December, but I guess it was formally initiated,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
But we initiated our comp plan update long before that, so it lends credence to how long we've been working on this.
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
So-
That's a good point.
Yeah, I think, it's worth, potentially, the one thing that's, important to note about this is the way that I went through this is it's, the unique fact that you have both the plan and the code being considered at the same time. So it wasn't until December 2017 that you had talked about code and plan being, concurrent efforts. But there's nothing to say you couldn't put in another whereas or preface that with the fact that, there was a committee formed in 2015 to begin review of comprehensive plan materials.
Because the zoning committees and everything else.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The next edit is this.
Oh, can we
Sorry.
stop?
Yep.
Who's doing these changes, what's the change gonna be?
Well,
We need your guidance on here, because we can't change this document unless we are going to make it less restrictive.
No, we can change it at
We
this point.
change it, but we would have to age it for another 5 days.
Well, no, because this is information, it's not
Okay,
really
so
placing a
okay.
restriction on what we're doing.
I'm trying to get the work, who's doing the work clear, so we get it done.
So I think we're safe, actually.
No, I'm not worried about the legality.
Okay, who's doing the edits? Molly, would you volunteer? Or would someone else
I
like
think
to?
it should be
Jeff, let's have Jeff do it, if that's okay.
All right,
Just so we have one person.
That's why I wanted to know, because
Thank
now the next question's gonna be, what's the change?
So, did we say we could mention the comp plan update first?
I would say that if we're gonna add something before that whereas, we add another whereas that says, whereas since whatever date the comp plan, I think it was June 2017, is that right, Peggy?
I think so.
I think June 2017, a volunteer comp plan committee was appointed by the mayor and has been working on development of a new comprehensive plan update. Take out the word new.
New, yeah.
Yeah. Everybody okay with that?
And I would, just then change, the process for which
was formally initiated in December 2017.
Excellent.
Instead of came under consideration.
Yes.
Good.
All right.
Actually, our first meeting was in
I'm
May.
I'm a slow writer.
Okay.
I'm gonna start from scratch so I get everything the way you want. Whereas,
Whereas in June 2017,
It's actually May.
May, thank you, a volunteer comprehensive plan committee was appointed by the mayor and began work on the development of an update to the village's comprehensive plan, period. And then Molly?
And then this is an edit to the
hold
end.
on. Began work on the update of the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
It'd be even slower if I was typing, so. Okay, what's next?
Then there'd be a revision to the end of the third whereas, that reads, the purpose of the moratorium extension is pending the modification, completion, and adoption of an updated comprehensive plan and zoning code. The final sentence should say, the process for which was formally initiated in December 2017.
Okay.
Do you have do you have this in Word or
Yes,
something that you
yes.
could send over? Okay.
Dorothy's got it, Dorothy's got it in Word, and I got it in Word.
Okay.
It came from me to Dorothy.
Dan, you have the floor again?
Yeah, I have, this is a quick edit. Second page, second whereas, whereas the village board has met 9 times, it should be the board of trustees, it's an easy one. But we're talking about several boards, so we should just be specific.
Just as a note, we do designate, in the beginning, the village board of trustees as village board.
Okay, then that's fine, I missed that.
It's in the first whereas.
So this was something that, I don't know, I'd love to get your feeling on this, guys. We must have met 47 times about this over the last year.
Probably.
And that's a number that's countable. You just go back over the calendar and say, this was a code review workshop, and add those up. I think that makes our case stronger.
I agree with you, Dan, because it documents that we
Yeah.
have been diligent in following through on what we said we were
Right,
going to do.
and it's a big number, and so we say on at least a week, in the last sentence of that second paragraph, on at least a weekly basis. I would like to put the exact number in, and I'll count that up, I don't mind. We don't archive the events calendar, do we, on the website? So like I could literally go back a year and it's all still
I
there.
just let Dorothea do it, because she's got the calendar right on her computer. And that way it's done in-house and you're not bothered, you've got your homework anyway.
I
Dan.
already wrote down count number of meetings.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm gonna put in there, team on, blank times since June of 2018.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Okay, next, Dan?
Next is,
I would just interject, I would just make sure that that's a clarification between the times with the consultant team. So the 9 is with us.
Yep.
The meetings with us, and then those
Right.
would be your own work sessions.
Right.
It's also been independently the consultant team on, or not on, blank times. So the same, yeah, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
I jumped in.
Yeah.
I bet you the previous whereas paragraph, there is that the comp plan committee met more than monthly. Is it countable? Same last phrase.
I'm sure it is,
Yeah.
Yeah.
We missed a couple, didn't we?
Well, I have them all here, and I can count them. You want to include things like tours that we took?
Right,
and
I have
Yes.
those.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Those are meetings, technically they're meetings.
And what about the speaker
Don't
series?
forget the
Yeah.
speaker
Yeah.
series. That's very, very important piece to this whole thing.
I have all those dates here.
Please.
So we had 4 speaker series events in the beginning in January of 20.
All right, so I think how we gotta handle this is just another blank times, including all that stuff.
Okay.
Okay?
You're gonna give that number to me at some point?
Before I leave.
Perfect.
and I don't want to throw a wrench into this, Tom, but are there sub-team meetings that are worth noting?
Yes, there are. I think
Okay.
I summarized these at one point. Didn't I send? There's a document I sent to
I
you.
think they're all,
You did send a summary out, Tom, I remember.
So I can count them
they're
again.
all under the same umbrella as far as I'm concerned.
Okay,
Yes.
Yeah, we had a lot of second.
I agree.
back to Dan.
Yeah, and I know this is tedious, but it makes the argument stronger.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed.
Now, the next one is the fourth whereas on that page, we're on page 2. We talk about, there's an open house tentatively scheduled for June 13th and a subsequent public hearing to be scheduled. Could we put a target month in there so that it looks like we have it planned, as opposed to this vague in the future?
You guys have that date? I mean,
We
rough.
talked, yeah, we talked about, holding the first, a public hearing in July, and if necessary, for a second, that could be in August.
Okay, so you could say summer 20.
Right, or we could say Q3,
Okay.
which would be fine.
What do you want? What do you want?
I say Q3.
We have a,
What if we said, and I like this even better, Lily just handed this to me.
Molly provided it.
We have a schedule provided by Molly, and somewhere in this whereas we said, these public hearings will be held in accordance with the schedule developed by Barton and Lejudas and submitted, whatever the date is on, April 4th, 2019.
I
Next
don't want
year.
them to have to refer to another document. Like,
Well,
the
we
facts
could
that are-
attach this, and we should attach it to it.
All right, so.
But if we're gonna be specific and show that we have a detailed plan, I think this aligns with what you're thinking, Dan.
So right at the end of that, I say all in accordance with the schedule prepared by the consultant team. The next here too as Exhibit A.
Excellent.
And I only have 2 more.
Go ahead, Dan.
On page 3, this should fit somewhere in 1 and 2, the first and second whereas. The whole point is that it will be cheaper because we'll do seeker once. I think we should be explicit about that in here.
I think it will be cheaper and more efficient in terms of time
Right.
as well.
Well,
Yes.
the 2 are connected.
Yep.
So especially because, we're gonna incur legal fees. So I think we should say it's going to be cheaper to do it this way. Or it projects to be cheaper.
The third, so basically whereas the interconnectedness
Yeah.
and timing of adoption of the comprehensive plan update and zoning code update should be considered jointly under the New York State Environmental Quality Review Act. It could say so as to avoid the segmentation of such actions and take advantage of, the efficiency or reduce additional costs, legal and consultant fees
Right.
for the adoption.
Right.
And reduce consultant and legal fees
Expenditures.
in connection with this process.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
By only having to do it once is essentially what we're saying. It'll save the taxpayer money, is what I'm trying to say, or it projects to. So my last one was, do we want to make a statement that it is our intent not to extend this again? To put in black and white that we're really trying to make this the final extension of it. Doesn't mean that we're gonna live by that, but it is purely our intent.
I would ask Jeff for his.
You could say that it is the intent of this is the board's intent in adopting this extension that the process will be concluded as outlined in Exhibit A.
Right.
I like that. Okay. I'm good with that.
Now, where would we add the
Let
exclusion
me
of
catch
these
it
lots?
first. Excuse me.
In our PR of it, we would say it's our intent that this is the last time we extend it. And we have an aggressive schedule to meet that. We thought of it. You have everything you need, Jeff?
No. Make this the final extension. And aggressive
Dave, do you have time to talk after this meeting?
All right, so this is what I got.
Okay, can you text me later?
Whereas it is the intent of the village board to make this the final extension and meet the aggressive timeframes established by Schedule A, and we can change however we want to change it. It's just, I think that's what you want, some flavor like that.
Okay,
Is that all right?
yep, that sounds all right.
Where's that gonna go?
Toward the end.
I think towards the end.
Yeah.
I think right after the bullet that had the reference the schedule that Barton and Legibus has drawn up. Dan, did you have another? Was there another bullet?
So I have a question, and it is, when is the right time to talk about the schedule? Since we're gonna live by this and want Jeff's involvement, probably Justin Balestra as well, and Molly and John. So when is a good time? Is that what now is for? Because if we're gonna extend this, we gotta meet that schedule, and we should go through that. as a
I think let's capture all of this, make sure we're through this, and then I think it's an appropriate topic for discussion. Agreed, everybody? Okay. Any other changes?
What about Lily's question about?
I'm getting to that. So the question Lily raised was if we are now going to exempt B1 from the continuation of the moratorium, so the moratorium would expire in B1, where should we interject that language?
We're gonna add at the end of now therefore be it resolved, except that this moratorium extension shall not apply to, I got the language, I had it going a different way, shall not apply to the B1 zone.
And what, I'm not totally convinced that B1A can't, could be included in that.
As we discussed with the consultant, we are discussing changes in the B1A. And so that would, they need to be addressed, and that would be fine in the face.
There's more sensitive design issues in the B1A, Renee, because it's a zero storefront area where the storefronts are up against the sidewalk, and we felt it was probably the safer thing was to leave that out in case, just in case.
Okay.
I don't think it's likely, but just in case.
I didn't remember anything significant from
Yeah.
from our discussion.
I don't think there is, but I
Okay,
think the
just in
safer
case.
thing is to not touch it.
All right, then the other question I have, and this is gonna be a sensitive one, but we've got a couple, like the area in Northfield Commons that was up for, more, relief from the moratorium. We can't, I'm assuming it's not a good idea to segment certain properties out of the B4. It's better, okay.
Yeah,
So
especially
like that one
one.
empty property that was gonna be the breakfast place, like, it's just gonna continue to sit empty, and maybe we accept that as we try to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, because of the way, that's one of the areas that the comprehensive plan team's still talking about. So in the same, applying to that same standard that you would to the rest of the districts and parcels, I think that it probably wouldn't be right.
I think that because that's a primary focus of both the comp plan committee and the zoning updates, that we really have to leave it in there. Okay, anything else, Steph? Do you think we're done with the law?
I mean, you're done from my perspective. If you're done from your perspective, you're done from my perspective. To Dan's question about the schedule, I emailed John and Molly and said, is this possible? I mean, are we setting ourselves to jump over the Empire State Building, or can we really do this? And I think they're both pretty confident. I don't want to speak for them.
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, the schedule that you have in front of you is exactly the schedule that we set from the beginning. with the way that the deliverables go. Now, the way we've gone through the zoning, just because of the different contexts and issues and things we've come up with, we took a couple different, left turns in the process, but with the way that this is gonna wrap up, I mean, we're right on target having the drafts of all the things that we've, stated we'd have by this time. And, we have the ample opportunity to finish out, what ultimately is becoming a joint part of the districts and the development standards. And then just definitions is the final piece. So, I mean, we're really a significant way through it. It's just that the district framework obviously is very much based on the input of the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I guess the only unknown on our end is looking ahead over the summer. We work over the summer, that's not a big deal for us, but you as a board, clearly you are zoning committee. So the only thing that we didn't really take into account is there something that's going on in the summer? Are you gonna have a hiatus or a quorum issue or something like that with some of these boards?
Well, not on this board. I think we're planning to sort of work diligently through it. And, I think the comp plan committee, I think even last summer, there was enough of the committee intact, even when people were away on vacation, that the work of the committee can continue through. Peggy, you had a question?
I just had a question on the period of the extension. Is it 4 months or 6 months? What is the period of
It would be June, July, August, and September, 4 months.
And we're positive we can get the seeker review and everything done by then, Molly? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, no, we had built this into,
Right.
like I said, the process originally, and it'll be beneficial since we have, so both the code and the plan, will ultimately need to be in a near complete point when we go to the public in June 13th.
Exactly.
And the whole point of that meeting is to provide that informal preliminary opportunity for public input. So when you do get to public hearing, hopefully, the chance of there being surprises or, significant public comment, is reduced. And so that way we have, 90% documents of both to present and talk, to the public about, and then we can move forward. We're confident we can get you a draft of that plan, to post and notify early in July so that you can have a first public hearing then. And like I said before, if necessary, you could hold a second in August.
And when do we start the seeker process?
So the seeker and the county referral can be completed, I would say, once we have that draft document.
So all in July?
In July, yep.
Perfect.
And you just need to give, obviously, the county 3 days to review that.
They're planning to for the LWC referral.
Yes.
Justin, do you have thoughts on this? I'm sorry to put you on the spot, but
Well, my thoughts is it's nuts, to be frank.
why is that?
Well, two things. One, the odds that, given the scope of what you're changing, a new comprehensive plan and an entirely new zoning code, the odds that there's nothing in there that could impact traffic, nothing in there that could impact view sheds, nothing, and everything in there is absolutely zero chance of impacting the environment. I think that's really exceedingly unlikely. So, the normal, my understanding is the normal course of action for this that's legally defensible is to pause deck it and then come up with the environmental impact statement and explain why the actions chosen mitigate impacts on the environment to the maximum extent practical. It's much more.
But I would argue that the point of much of the work that's being done, for example, the focus, let's just pick the design standards for Shane Place. The intent of those design standards is to supersede existing zoning with protections that recognize the view sheds that are there and create design guidelines that allow new growth while recognizing the significance of the important views that exist and protecting those views. And so I think if you go through methodically and you look at all the work that's being done, both by the comp plan committee as well as the zoning update committee, everything really has been, the whole process has been, number one, identify what are our existing assets. Number two, how can we protect those assets, enhance them, and still allow evolution and growth to occur here in the village? So the whole process that we have orchestrated so far has really been designed to address the very questions that seeker asks. And Molly, if I could have you expand on that, please do.
Yeah, another reasoning, so a GEIS in our opinion is not necessary for a comprehensive plan update or a code update, because if you think about it, the adoption of them, they're just documents, they have no significance, it's not gonna change traffic on the street tomorrow or environmental conditions. And any action that would be taken, whether it's a capital improvement project or a development proposal, will go through its own individual seeker review process at the time of consideration. So being the fact that the comprehensive plan is that guiding document with all intents and purposes is trying to better the policy of the village with respect to seeker, and then the same with the zoning code is we're trying to do exactly what Bob said, strengthen those regulations to the benefit of the community character, environment, sustainability, active transportation, all of those things. So a GEIS is really not necessary. The long EAF would be, in our experience, it's more,
It would make sense because, it would be one thing if we were going to decertify the historic district north of the canal. And then there would be an adverse consequence. But nothing that the comp plan committee has done, nor that the zoning committee has done, has been done with the intent of having an adverse consequence. Everything has been done with the intent of protecting what has been identified as a significant resource that the village possesses.
And just to give a little more practical perspective, I've done several GISs for project-related things. In terms of a comprehensive plan, I've done it once. Town of Union, it's down near Binghamton, just west of Binghamton, just to orient the board. I didn't agree with the approach, but their comprehensive plan that was adopted preceding our code update essentially said we're not an agricultural community anymore. So the entire northern third of the town is essentially agriculture. And as part of the zoning update, following through the comp plan recommendation, they're wiping that away and putting different residential densities, commercial densities. So even though I do think this is a policy document, just like Molly said, they said let's be conservative and do an EIS because we're setting the stage for drastic changes to our landscape over the next 10 to 20 years. So that was the motivation for them to do an EIS as part of the code update. Again, I think Pittsford is essentially you want to enhance what you have, preserve what you have. In addition to it being a policy document, like Molly said, documents plural, I think the approach to this community is preservation and maintenance. So again, I don't see that being a significant impact. It's a positive impact in a good way, not in the seeker language. So I just don't think it's necessary from a policy document and given the direction of those policy documents. I don't know if that makes sense at all, but.
Let me ask a question as a project manager. I'll probably get killed for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I would never build a project plan that has no buffer in it. And this seems to have no buffer in it, which is a little concerning. If anything goes wrong, we miss that final date.
I don't necessarily agree.
Okay.
Because, if in perfect world, which hopefully we've done our job right, we've taken the input and direction of the committee and the community, we bring this document, the 90% documents to the public in June. The feedback we hope is, we hope we get a great turnout and a lot of comments, but typically at that point in the process, we are not given any wholly comments that are changing complete approaches or context of the document. So with that being said, moving forward into a July public hearing, our experience is, especially with codes, that the opportunity for that initial public open house gets everybody's questions and anxieties out of the way before the public hearing. So it started to grease the wheels to the actual formal adoption process. Most of the time with zoning codes especially, people's questions are, what are you doing to my property? Or what's, is this becoming more restrictive or less restrictive? We'll have those answers, we'll have the ability to tie that to the context of the plan at the open house, and then I don't think that a second public hearing is necessary, but if it were, and we had additional things to consider, those edits can be made within a month, and you can move forward with an adoption in August.
I mean, we're comfortable, but again, we can't predict everything. If the board says, you know what, let's make it another month out, end it early, again, that's your discretion. Or leave it as proposed and extend it if need be.
Mhm.
There is that wiggle room. But it's a good question, yeah.
And Jeff, you feel you'll have enough time, because you've only given input on a few of the things that we have, on a few of the chapters that we have reviewed. And the first one that you reviewed, you had a lot of input on it.
I will make the time and I'll get it done, from my perspective. Just being the anal person that I am, 4 months scares the snot out of me. But that's just me.
What's the specific date? October?
September,
September
It's September 15th, it says October here.
And was 4 months chosen instead of 5 months for a reason? Is that like, it was just a?
No.
Okay. Just
I think
getting
it
back
felt,
to-
I think it felt more aggressive than 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it met the schedule that you put
Right, it's
forward.
essentially just aligned with the initial schedule
Yeah.
that we had put forward.
Let me ask you a question. Because it does seem like this, as Dan suggested, this would be a firm deadline, would it help now to start thinking about publicity around our public meeting dates? So that, because that's going to, number one, raise public awareness that we're getting to the end of the process and the key opportunities for additional public input. And because some of those opportunities may occur during the summer, the more we can publicize them, the better is the feedback that we get. And I think, once we have those set in stone, it's also going to be a good reminder to everybody that we're crashing into these dates and they're not being moved because they've been publicized and set in the public realm.
We're smiling this time when I talked for about an hour yesterday about next steps and tomorrow night's comp plan meeting. That was one of the things he asked. He said, let's start talking publicity and advertising tomorrow night.
Yeah, right. Okay, good.
I really, sorry to butt in. I'm hearing public hearings, are these legal notices you're gonna need to put out?
Yes.
Okay. I have a delay with newspaper, because it's a local paper, so really think I need 10 days at least in the paper.
Okay.
I need an extra week to get it to the paper, into the paper, so as soon as you can get, you really need to,
We need to build that into the
Yeah.
schedule.
I appreciate the
So
conversation.
after the June meeting, we need to know pretty quickly
Yeah, because there's certain
how
deadlines I
fast we
have.
can. So you're saying 20 days out for sure?
At least,
At
at
least.
least.
I'm just gonna throw this out there and, just because I think Dan has brought up a good point. Would it give us any more protection to say September 30th instead of September 15th? Just in case there's some crisis that we don't anticipate, it would give us another couple weeks. Someone has a hip replacement.
Let's do 5 months.
Don't sign me up.
Let's do 5 months. It's better than 6. But stay with the deadline. Stay with the schedule.
Just asking, what do you think, what do you guys, what do we?
That's always gonna be my knee jerk, right?
Yeah. 5 months? October 15th? Everybody, Dan, what do you think? I think you brought up a good point.
There's no slack in the system.
Renee, what do you
I mean,
think?
this, 5 is definitely better than 6. I think we're gonna, hear from the public a little bit, and we've put in as much as we possibly could to explain, we are working on it, we've been done X amount of meetings, so hopefully we can stay ahead of this one. I would
Maybe
rather have
four and a
pushing-
half is
well,
better
I'd
than
rather
5?
have- I don't know that there's a big difference between 4 and 5, but definitely, 4 or 5 is better than 6. And I think we've got to explain this.
From the consultants, what
The
they
nice
do?
thing with 5, if we do it in 4 or 4.5, we get a gold star.
Okay, because we're ahead of schedule.
From
Okay,
Jeff.
all
As
right.
we get it done, we get to lift the moratorium early.
Right, exactly.
So to Jeff's point, we keep the schedule the way it is, no matter what end date we set.
But just given ourselves.
Steve,
I just had a curiosity question. If they do complete in 4 months, would the moratorium be able to be stopped then? Or would the moratorium still continue out to the 5th
We
month?
we can end the moratorium early. If we're done early, we can do it earlier.
Would that have to be the subject of a public hearing that the attorney's asking the clerk?
I don't know.
The answer is yes.
We also said we could amend it.
Yeah, but think about, we're meeting in April to get something done in May, right? So,
October 15th. That we are
so
deadline.
what would we do if we were Steve and all of us wanted to?
Hitch put a statement in there saying that the if the process was completed, the moratorium would follow the process.
What, couldn't we as part of, the answer is we can as part of, well, as part of the public hearing, publish that the moratorium will terminate upon adoption of the comprehensive plan and zoning code.
Right, there we go, there we go,
If
good.
it gets done early. Yeah,
Yeah, I was
When
thinking
it gets done,
yeah, I'm sorry.
by
Okay.
resolution, the board can end the moratorium or something.
right, but if you build it into the,
Law.
Do you have a meeting on August 13th? Just do it on my birthday.
It'll not
That's
be
what we
on
have on your birthday.
You should be other places.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, it's a great nerd thing for me.
What would you rather be doing?
Problem is, that's
Are you making the motion?
but that's
Yeah.
that's something for the checklist, is that's gonna be part of that local law.
So I will make a motion to amend the end date of the moratorium to October 15th, 2019. Do I have a second?
Oh, wait, but aren't we saying or completion?
Or
of-
completion of the adoption of the new zoning code.
Right.
Where's that, where are we in?
It's in the first paragraph. Page 1. Do I have a second?
I will second that, but I want to make certain that we're talking about
The
the
end
adoption
date
and filing.
The end
is at
date
the very
filing.
end of the thing.
Yes, at the end.
It's at the end.
Right.
The beginning is the start.
Right.
Yes.
So I'm gonna say 5 months, October 15th, 2019.
Okay.
Or sooner terminated.
Any comments? All in favor of the change?
Aye.
No?
Oh,
You're gonna move the whole thing to public
To
hearing.
public hearing.
Yeah, I think your changes just.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's important to know.
And this is not more restrictive, so it's okay, it's less restrictive. Okay.
And-
All right.
And I do think when we talk about this to the public, it's quite acceptable to say that our target date is September 15th. We've built some time into the project plan.
So we don't have to
for
extend this again.
unknowns,
Yeah.
so that we don't have to
Yeah.
extend it.
And also because we wanted to be sure we incorporated the public input that's coming
Right.
from the set.
Correct.
Date. We may need one, we may need two, so. I
So
think
we're
that's
allowing
good.
time if necessary for more
Right.
changes.
We have
to
a
the public.
particularly engaged citizen base.
We sure do. We sure do. That's an understatement of the day, Dan. Okay. All right, would someone like to make a motion to take this local law to public
How do
hearing?
we see this happening? We're going to adopt the comprehensive plan and adopt the zoning code revision in one fell swoop?
I think you would do adopt the comprehensive plan
First.
by resolution, and then do
The
the
local
zoning
law.
code amendment by local law.
Yeah.
So there would be two separate actions,
Right,
but have a single seeker and a single public hearing.
And the zoning, the local law to adopt the new code would also include language to get rid of the
Yes.
obsolete code.
Yes,
Okay.
which, and again, this makes the whole process much cleaner, and that it's a wholly repeal replace.
Much simpler for everybody. Okay, okay.
So-
All right.
So the change that I'm looking at then is going to be at the end, October 15th, 2019, unless sooner terminated by the local law adopting the revised zoning code?
Yep.
Okay, so now we've talked about a bunch of changes, I'm gonna make them, I think the motion is to send this to public hearing containing the changes made at this meeting.
Yes. So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
Renee got it first. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay.
You, like, public hearing date is May 14th at 7:30.
May 14th at 7:30. Okay.
You want to make a motion to that effect now?
Yes, I'll amend my motion to reference May 14th.
Okay.
What, how is this presented to the people?
Yeah.
Is this a deck that has the highlights of this? It's the document? Is it the schedule? Like, how do we physically present this to
The
people?
note, so, the notice of, I'm sort of stepping on Dorothy's toes. The notice of public hearing will indicate that this is what is being planned. The reason that notice says, and the proposed moratorium is on file with the village for, I assume you put it on the website as well.
Well, no, I get this. What I'm talking about is a presentation to the people that people in the audience will understand. Because people are going to be very interested in this.
Well, I
And
would
my
think-
question is really for these guys.
I think that would be, you could do that just prior to opening the public hearing.
I think to answer your question, Dan, I think we should have a summary
Yeah.
of the work that's been done so far, including the comp plan and the zoning committee. And then we should have a copy of the law with, and most importantly, a schedule, this schedule here, detailing how we intend to finish the work that needs to be done.
And I also think it's important to underscore what they were talking about earlier about this process and following it this way will allow it to be more efficient, more effective, reduce,
Absolutely.
you know, less resources,
Less
costs.
confusion,
Yeah, and I think we're gonna end up. with
more
better
streamlined,
results.
more
Yeah. Save
user-friendly.
money. Yeah.
Can you guys be here for that? Is this something that we should pay them for? And should we use billable hours on this? To have them in the room on this?
I think, I don't know if it's necessary for them to be here. I think at the very least, we should probably have Tom here to talk about the comp plan committee, because that's an independent committee and Tom represents it. If that's okay with you, Tom?
We've got another public hearing that night.
Okay.
What
Yeah.
night is it?
5:14.
Tuesday.
I think as long as we have a summary of the work that's been done, and we have that pre-typed up, we can present that ourselves that night, and I'd be happy to do that.
There
We should
is,
use slides.
about just in the language, that you went through tonight, there is a summary of what's been completed and what's to be completed for both the code and the land.
Yep, very helpful. Thank
Yep.
you.
Great, great.
If my thought would be something like what you did in advance of the moratorium adoption. That sort of presentation of both the bullet points about what we've done and how we've done it, because people aren't going to read it.
Yep, no, we can put it in a PowerPoint.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you were suggesting.
Let's.
Okay, we'll work on it together. Okay, good.
I think that'd be perfect,
And then we'll edit it as a team, and you guys can give input, and Tom and Molly and everybody.
Good.
Not John, but everybody else.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Can we move on? I think we can. All right, let's talk about the village survey.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you for coming for that.
Thanks, guys.
Very much
See some of you
appreciated.
tomorrow.
Do you want me to hear for this? So-
Yeah, I think I would.
Okay.
And I don't think it'll take long, but we wanted to talk a little bit about how to make this public.
Will you resend me that schedule?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, and I sent Dan an email earlier today. I know that was kind of a terse email, I didn't intend it that way, Dan. My point was that the reason I agreed to have the information presented privately to each of the trustees is that was the strong recommendation of the consultant. And I think if we're gonna make it public, I think we probably need another conversation with the consultant to make sure there aren't any pitfalls and I say that because there are, when we asked residents to respond to the survey, there is an insinuation of privacy and anonymity. And in some ways, this survey, we did get emails from some people, and I'm not an expert in surveys. So if I just throw this out there, I'm gonna do it in the wrong way. I would like to touch base with Bill McBride and get his recommendations on what he feels would be the best way to make sure that all the information can be safely made accessible to the public.
I think that, I agree with that, and I think that job one is first to give it to the comprehensive plan committee
Yes.
for their input and their review. That would be first.
And Tom, you have a copy of the,
I do have a paper copy of it.
yes, okay.
I do have a question, I don't think it's a bad idea. The entire report with all of the individual comments is cumbersome to read, and I
Yes.
think you're gonna take action or think about it. My wife, who has been in, she's retired, but for many years in human resources, for hospitals, public, community service agencies, Brockport was her last, she did employee satisfaction surveys like every year. She always took the raw comments and did a summary, which I hope Bill would recommend too. In other words, there were, question 13 had 27 comments. There were 9 comments about the lack of communication, whatever. There were 4 comments. That kind of a summary, I would almost like to see that before I hand out copies of this whole book to each member of
Have
the
that
comp
done
plan.
first, ahead of that.
You know, I would, because this, you know,
It's cumbersome.
it's cumbersome.
Yep.
And there's really no, you spend all of your time reading the comments, and what's this about the woodpeckers, and, you know, it's just distracting to.
I didn't
to
even
read.
notice anything about woodpeckers on here.
Yeah, there's a chapter on woodpeckers.
Gotta read the footnotes.
I thought I did, but I
Oh.
woodpeckers.
So anyway, that's, I don't know if Bill can do that, or if it's better done, again, in my wife's experience, the consultants that provided things like this, she didn't want to show her individual managers, because she was afraid they were gonna recognize their employees who were out to get them, and that they're gonna retribution. She worked in some tough places, so she wanted to make sure that the information was there, it was summarized. I mean, she wasn't sugarcoating anything, but she just didn't, there were like 5 bullet points instead of, 27 individual comments. So I would like, if we can do that,
I would like to talk to Bill and,
Yeah.
and investigate and see if we can get a summary out there. You know, his recommendation, I'm not opposed to having, you know, a copy available for people to look at if they really want to burrow into it. But I think to make it most usable and to get the widest distribution, I think you hit on the nail on the head, Tom.
so it would certainly make it more usable for the comprehensive plan committee.
And I think for the public as well.
Yes. And I didn't see anything in here that requires our immediate action, other than perhaps the, some of the demographic information.
Well, the opinions about what should happen on Shane Place and.
Yes, yeah,
Those
yeah,
questions, for sure.
the stuff that's displayed
Yeah,
on
the
a
green
graph.
space,
Yeah, really all of it. My only concern are the voluminous individual comments.
Yeah,
Yes.
that was the question I had was, well, obviously we need to scrub the emails out there. for people
Yes,
to
right,
get. And if we do, keep a copy somewhere here, for people to look at. But then I had wondered about, and I'm not a survey person, I don't want to water anything down. I think the public took this and as far as a transparency, our transparency as a board and a village, we should make that available. I also, what you're saying, I don't know how you handle individual comments that could be identified as a person. I don't know if that's an issue, so we need to ask Bill about that, because I like your idea about like, all right, yeah, grouping them together so we're not watering anything down. Yet we're making it a little more palatable and protecting if there were anyone.
And
be identified.
we're also increasing the probability that more people will get the information by making it digestible. And I think, you know, if there's a 2-phase process here, to have a summary that's widely available, and then if somebody wants to burrow into it,
Here in the office.
let them go at it, yeah.
So we make the comments, those individual comments available.
Yeah, yes, I think that's the right thing.
I just had a comment about, were you talking about the list of email addresses at the end of the?
Yeah.
Yeah. Any names should be
Right.
kept in Village Hall for our purposes and not,
None of that gets
because that identifies people who
Yeah.
responded
took
to
the
the
survey.
survey.
And anything that references an individual identity not be available to the public. We should protect people's anonymity in all
Right.
cases.
Kevin?
Well, that's my question.
Yeah.
I think lists and things like that are easily exempted from, with FOIL, because you can't give people basically a mailing list. It's not really the purpose. The general comments, and actually I have received a FOIL for this survey. So my question is,
Does it include the comments?
well,
I would assume it does.
yeah.
I would think the comments are foilable because it's part of the document. So, you know, we can check with the Office for Open Government, but I would assume that they would be foilable.
Now that I've received the survey, I have a hard time arguing it's not available.
Can we redact? Can we redact?
Yeah, I can redact.
We approved you.
You're good.
You're all good to go.
Sorry, we started at 5:30. We went,
You know what?
You started at 5:30?
we
I might
did.
have gave you the wrong time.
Oh, I thought it was 7 o'clock.
Might have been
It
Yeah.
definitely is.
But don't worry, you're all
You're all
approved.
good.
You're good.
There, thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
Have a good evening.
Oh, join us over there that way below that.
Bob,
Yeah, yes.
they're not approved.
Oh,
The public hearing is scheduled.
You have a
oh,
public
the
hearing.
public hearing is scheduled for, what was the date?
14th, May 14th.
May 14th.
Okay,
Okay.
that's the week before.
So you can come to another one of our meetings.
I love to do that.
Scott,
Have a good night.
Yeah.
I got it.
Okay.
So can you redact
Yeah, I can do that.
the identifying information?
I can
That's-
redact with identifying information.
And that you won't violate any FOIL requirements to do that?
I won't, but the thing is, it's already foiled, so
David has a comment.
how,
David, you had a comment?
I think you should ask Bill McBride, a professional marketing survey person, whether those questionnaires are the property of the village or the property of the survey company.
Right.
He's got a
The
copy
question
of
is, if you
notice.
foil the report you're given in the detail, but I'm not clear that what the survey company does is the property of the village. I don't think it is.
no, I'm not worried about what they have. I can only,
Good point, Dave.
I can only release what I have in the office, in my hand,
Which is this report,
which is this report,
which
which,
does not include personal data, does not include the answer sheets, I assume.
no,
Right.
It does include
It has
personal.
personnel.
there is
data.
some personal data, this
There's
won't be
emails
released.
in there.
That won't be released,
Okay,
There's names and email addresses of volunteers and.
that won't be released.
right. Their emails personal would be redacted on a FOIL normally.
Yeah, that wouldn't be
Okay.
released. I'm just saying, it's already been foiled, so.
Good.
You know, within 20 days, this will be put in someone's hands,
Yep.
is what I'm
Mhm.
saying. So whatever you're planning as a release,
We should still have that.
you
Yep.
you might want to.
Well, I'm gonna give Bill a call tomorrow and get his counsel on it. And then I think we move forward and make it available as soon as we can.
That's all I'm saying, it's already been foiled, so.
I had another question in terms of any follow-up reports that they could do for us, and maybe we need to talk with Bill about that too. Might be interesting to know how different age groups responded to different issues, for the comp plan purposes. And, I mean, I'm just thinking some other things too. Whether, whether an owner has more interest in certain areas than a renter, or,
And I think a comment that you made to me the other day, Peggy, that I wanted to share with everyone here,
yeah.
because I think it was a good one, is there seems to be some differences in the demographic information included at the beginning of the survey versus what Barton and LeJudas
And what we have
included in the
separately.
comp plan. Right.
Yeah,
So
so I
we
wanna
definitely want to compare
Take
those.
a look at that
Yeah.
for the comp plan committee purposes.
Okay, anything else on the survey? Can we move on?
So we're asking Bill 2 questions.
One, can you do a narrative and a summary? And what's his recommendation for distributing, what's the priority for distributing the information?
Do we want him to come to our next meeting on Tuesday?
I can see if he's available.
Talk, because
Sure.
we'll have a lot of questions.
Okay.
Should this be an agenda item for the next meeting?
I think so, yeah, I think it's appropriate. Okay,
Then we're gonna have to assign who's summarizing what.
I think
The data's the easy part.
I think saying he would do a
I think
summary.
so too.
I think I remember him telling me that, so it may be underway and I'll find out. And we'll all find out hopefully on Tuesday if he's available. Okay. Anything else on survey before we move on? Okay. Can we move to code review?
Okay, two things. Number one is I did ask Darren and Molly to provide, Jeff with all completed draft materials that they have right now available to them so that you could begin what we have completed thus far. Then the
The
board.
blank look on my face is because I haven't seen.
Yeah.
As opposed to the normal blank look on my face.
And the second is for the board to determine when they would like to have their next code review, whether they want to continue with the schedule that we've had, and just continue with that until we decide we're done. And did you want B4 design standards to be discussed, or are we going to do things correctly and wait for the comprehensive plan committee to complete their work?
I think we should keep moving.
Okay.
I guess, I think we should keep moving because I think if we get more information from the comp plan committee, we're gonna have to correct course because we need to reflect that in what we're doing.
Okay.
And I have no objections to doing that, but I think because of the time is so constrained that whatever we can get done, I think we should try to keep moving forward.
So that we will meet next Tuesday at
Mhm.
5:30.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'd be for that.
Okay.
Everybody else okay with that? Okay.
We were expecting another round of drafts from Molly and John.
Correct.
I thought it was supposed to come in last night or a week ago last
Yes, I
night.
did send her an email regarding that, and I asked her that when they were completed, that they also be sent to Jeff.
Well, to us.
Yes,
And I'm
we
hoping-
all,
yeah.
everybody.
I'm assuming we'll get them before next Tuesday, so we can actually discuss them next Tuesday again.
That was it.
Okay. And then I'll make a motion. Yes, you have something?
close the meeting. I need something really quick.
Okay, go ahead, Dorothea.
Dan, I'm not sure where you got with Greenlight. I really need to pull the trigger here and get internet service resolved so we can move with the cloud. Can I do that? Because I really need to move. We got time frames with installing
Just because it's
software
kind of
and
like
times and
Thank you, Tom.
Even if-
Or what?
if I can propose, if I can just get it
It probably
for
would.
a year.
It probably would.
Okay.
But that one will work for sure.
So I think we should do it as a regular meeting.
So, Dorothy, you want to continue?
Okay, what I propose, so just to get us something for the year to get through this crisis mode, because I'm down to what, wanting to fix this clock. Can we lease sign the Spectrum for a year? And then that gives us time to figure out Greenlight, because as you found, are you still waiting for a callback?
Yeah, and I've called them a couple times.
And I think you're running into what I ran into trying to
Well-
deal with.
But let me ask you guys, the challenge is, it's 20% of the speed for 300% of the cost. And it just seems crazy. I mean, can we at least dangle that to Spectrum
I
and say,
can
look,
tell
we're
you,
getting
I
this
have
from
pushed
Time Warner?
Spectrum on these numbers. The problem, I think, you're still looking at residential compared to governmental rates. And there is such a wide berth of rates between business and, and you've seen the quote I had from them.
From November.
When I approached them in November. I'm not saying
Green
it's actually.
Light. So you got a quote from Greenlight in November.
Right.
Okay.
Dan got the service at his home, got a great rate.
Do you pay $50 a month, or what do you pay?
$50 a month for 5 times the speed what they're proposing. And they're proposing $150 a month for 20% of the speed. It's just such a wide gap.
And what did we get as a quote from Greenlight, Dorothea?
Greenlight, I got $150 for, it was 120, it was the same.
Right.
Yeah, it was 100 over 20 or whatever. Right now from Spectrum, I'm getting 400 over 20 for 199. So our overall cost would be an increase of $10 on our bill, $10 to $11 on our bill. The increase for DPW would be like $50 more a month to get them up to a reasonable speed.
Can you give me through the trying to save us money.
I know you're trying to, but you're
Yeah.
nickel and diming, and you're killing the time frame for me to get the project overall done. And I'm trying to, I know median out set this back, but
What,
my problems with Greenlight, let me just state it, you're running into them, getting someone to call back, they're not set up really to deal with business and governmental accounts. They're so new, I feel like, they're just not ready for us. And even putting them at DPW is gonna cost us more, because they wanna charge more than Spectrum needs to charge us.
What do you guys think?
So you need a decision tonight, or
I wanna get this tied up with a bow, I got people waiting
I
to
have-
pull
I
the
have
trigger
one
on the
question.
cloud.
green light on residential customers, sometimes you have up to a 3-month wait to get them to install it. Is that true here? Do we know?
I don't know, because they didn't give me installation times, and I can't wait 3 months. It's gonna be a problem with the grant.
Well, let's see, it's Tuesday. Do you think you can get an answer in a couple of days, Dan? What does everybody else think?
I defer to Dorothea because she is the person who is working with us every day, and it affects her and the function of the office. So I have to defer to her expertise here. It would be wonderful if somebody would respond. It's not as if somebody has tried. But is there a reason why it couldn't take place later on in the year?
Yes.
Okay, it has to be
What
signed
I'm
contract.
saying is,
Okay.
right now, we got a grant for the software, for the grant. I need the speed, I need the cloud. I can't do the cloud without the speed. So
So you've got to upgrade the
everything's
service. Mhm.
Everything's hinging on the internet right now.
Yep.
I will, if we really want to give more time to try to get green light, then I'm gonna ask the board, no holds barred, next Tuesday, I get a decision on the internet service. So
Okay.
I can make those decisions because
Can we use that as a firm date?
Yeah.
Would that give you enough time?
Can we okay that?
And if we
And
can,
make sure
yeah.
if they can install, they can do it within 3 weeks.
Okay.
I mean, I know I can get that from Spectrum.
Mhm.
Even if we go with Spectrum, I wouldn't say we go 3 years, maybe go a year to see if Greenlight and any other service comes along that can give us a better rate.
Sure.
I'm not happy with the rates. I think we could do, I want
agree.
better.
Yeah.
But anyway, if we can just make sure that's the decision we make next week. Is it okay?
Yes,
Sure.
yes, that
Sounds
makes
good.
sense.
Okay, real quick though, I do need to extend the professional service agreement with Integrated for another 50 hours with this project, so they have the hours and time for the cloud and everything, so we can meet go.
So moved?
And there's a cost.
Yep, go ahead.
And
Do
we
you
have,
have any indication of how many times we used their support services over the last year?
oh yeah, we use them a lot. Because they use the time, they've been using the time with the recent install, the data lines, everything. For the computers, when I was out, they had to call them on several things. Normally, we use them very minimal. A lot of this is going for the cloud, which we've already talked about. This is the cloud installation and getting all the data up there, so.
So it was about 6,000, right, Frank? 6,000 in services for Integrated, for IT? Was that the cost, 6,000?
We did you did a service contract with them for $4,250.
Okay.
We've used some of that with some of the services. We currently have 20 hours available at that time. We haven't spent that all, but with talking to them today for the cloud upgrade and everything else, this is something I presented. It was part of the cost I gave you for the overall IT issues. So we figured get this bundled up too, so we're ready to go.
We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And that's for the 50 hours. That's all I have. Thank you.
Now, is the budget narrative, will that be prepared for next Tuesday's meeting? Is that right? April
Yeah, it should
23rd?
be. Mary should have it ready when she's
And
looking
we'll
at
have
it.
that at some.
You'll have it in this packet.
I will have time tomorrow if she has something available to do some editing.
I will check with her in the morning. I haven't
Okay.
talked to her on the morning.
Okay, all right.
I had a member item for
Go
you at
ahead.
this meeting?
Go ahead.
I had asked, took the liberty of asking Dorothea to just do some research, a little research on the availability of public spaces, public meeting spaces in the village, in anticipation of the meeting on May 28th, just in case.
Mhm.
Because I'm thinking that FOPV, at the very least, and not even thinking about PCP, also would be sending out
Flyers.
bulletins and
Yep.
so forth.
Yep.
And so that we might anticipate a certain number of people, and I don't want us to be in danger of shutting down.
I agree.
We want to make, show that we did due diligence, at least to attempt to find
Mhm.
a spot. Sutherland is not available, and
What about
Dorothea was looking
I'm
into
still
the
working,
church.
reaching out to the church where
Well,
we.
Jefferson Road, I think, would be another option.
It gets tricky this time of year because of
Right.
the end of the year and
I
things going
understand
on,
that.
but certainly it's
I
an
think
option.
they checked and they had some kind of meeting going on.
They
as
had a
well.
meeting there.
She checked on.
But the church was the only other.
The church is the only other
Mhm.
outreach I had first.
What about the
We tried.
Fisher Room at the library?
I can check, that's,
Usually it's full, but
It's not very big, is it?
if it's 200 people.
it'll fit a little more, but typically, I've never been able to get that room. I can try.
Speaking of which, do we need to think about the 14th? For a bigger room?
That's what we're talking about.
No.
Oh, the moratorium.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I think we do.
Yeah, I think it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, I'll call.
Well, hold on. Because you set the public hearing for,
Well, I have
for
time
here,
to change the location.
for here.
Right.
Can we figure it out between now and next Tuesday and
Yes, I think so.
I gotta get the notice into the paper this week. I can figure it out.
so I think we should amend the motion to allow the clerk to publish for a place that's available, that is larger than
I
this.
amend my motion accordingly. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Oh, David has this.
I may have missed it in the beginning meeting, I was wondering on our other boards and vacancies, where we stand in that, because the election, I understand someone resigned from the DPRB.
I have interviewed some people. I will, in the next meeting or so, I'm going to be making recommended appointments to the board.
The organizational meeting is last Tuesday of the month?
Yeah, that's normally when we would do it. And that way the terms will end at a easy point on the calendar, and it's easier for the clerk to keep track of them. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank